All right, good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. If I can have you all come on in and take a seat, I'm going to hand this off to our lovely guests, and we'll get started.
Good morning. We're going to get started here, and we have Angela Foster with RAPHA International with us here today, and we're so excited to have her with us again. I'm going to just go ahead and hand it over to her.
Good morning. I was just telling Julie that and Doug that this is one of my favorite times. You at Plainfield are the only church that I visit every single year. And I get to do it twice. I come in August for the kickoff for this event, and then I get to come back in September for the actual event. And I told my staff, I said, okay, so I'm getting older. I'm going to be 60 in April, and I'm thinking about retirement. And I said, but nobody gets to come to Plainfield. It's only me. Even after I retire, I may be in my 90s, and I'm still coming, okay? So y'all can't get rid of me. So it is wonderful. Again, I say this with I was just telling somebody else, I know how to get here from the hotel. I mean, it's just like coming home for me. So I really, really appreciate all that you guys do for us. This morning, I'd like to start with a prayer. We are doing something new. RAPHA is expanding, and so I want to tell you all about that, what it looks like. And after I pray, we're going to show a short video, and then we'll get started. God, thank you so much for this church family that invests so much in the lives of the children that we serve. And I just am so grateful that I get to be the one that gets to come every year, gets to see and develop relationships and see the heart that they have for you and the heart they have for RAPHA International. Thank you, and help us to open our hearts and our minds to what you have for us today. In Jesus' name, amen.
The RAPHA Hope and Healing Center exists to walk alongside survivors of trauma, sexual exploitation, abuse, and trafficking. Serving both children and adults, it is our belief that every survivor has the potential to rise above circumstances they cannot control and enjoy a future free of the weight of those experiences. It is our privilege to support our clients through that process. We believe in quality training and services for our therapy staff. All of our therapists have extensive trauma training, including modalities like TFCBT, EMDR, and play therapy. We are ambassadors of hope and passionately advocate that no circumstance is beyond the scope of healing. We believe that bringing these resources to our community will promote healing, not only for the individuals we serve, but for our community as a whole.
So you have been supporting RAPHA International way back when it was still RAPHA House, because when we started in the beginning in 2003, we were just doing survivor care campuses for victims of human trafficking and sexual exploitation. So move forward, we have a campus there, and I've talked about this a lot, how our community efforts finding the parents and families of those children that those girls that came to us to live in our aftercare campus. We saw so many children at risk. So we start in the business of providing trauma-informed care and residential care for victims of human trafficking and sexual exploitation. And then we move into prevention, because as you're in those communities, you realize how many kids are at risk. And we talked about that probably last year and the year before, about preventing a child from going into the life of trafficking is so important. So we started that business. Now we have survivor campuses in Thailand, Cambodia, and Haiti. We are expanding the unit in Thailand because the Thai government has now said, okay, We understand all the work that you're doing for survivors. When they have active cases, when there are a court case open and their trafficker is still not either behind bars or at the very least being sought after. So those girls are in much more danger than a girl that we are still working, doing vocational training, education, all of things that we're doing to reintegrate. Because remember, our goal is not to keep these girls with us, it's to reintegrate them if it's safe to do so. So in the Thai government says, okay, so your long-term active cases need a different place to be. We don't want them in the same cottages. So now we have a partnership. If any of you follow us on RAPHA.org, you'll know that we have a partnership with the Tim Tebow Foundation. They are actually buying land for us and helping us create. It's going to share a wall so that we still have services that they can do together, but we have that expansion going on. So we've got Thai campus, and then we also have a prevention ministry programming going on in Mesat, Thailand. That's where the most need for those on the border of Burma, which is now Myanmar, and Thailand. So they're very transient, but the families that we do prevention with there don't have the resources. Again, with underdeveloped countries, developing countries, they don't have the resources that we do here. So all of that in Thailand. Then in Cambodia, we have 2 aftercare campuses and 2 prevention programs. And then in Haiti, we have what we now call, we have a survivor campus. We're about to move our girls to our brand new facility there, up in the mountains. Very, very dangerous in Haiti right now, but we are safe where we are up in the mountains. And then we have the prevention that we're doing there is called the Haiti Family Care Network, and we work with 6 other organizations to provide care for women and children that have been displaced, or if they have left a violent situation, then our Family Care Network helps them get microloans. We help them find safe housing and food and all of the things that you would want to do to prevent them from going off into the world of trafficking as well. So, started in the business of aftercare and prevention, and people always ask me, well, what are you doing in the United States? What do you do in the United States? Well, now I can tell you what we're doing in the United States. We started a pilot program 2 years ago in September of 2020. Started virtually because of the pandemic. But we started doing, we have our CEO, her sister, is a licensed therapist in trauma care. And so trauma-informed care is very different, and I've even written, in our little video, it says TFCBT and EMDR. I didn't know what those kinds of therapy are, but we do those therapies with our girls in our aftercare campuses, but I'd never really dove into that part because my job is just to love on the girls while they're there. So we decided we have this great resource, and our community in the tri-state area of where our home office is did not have those resources for children and adults. Trauma-informed care. So let's talk about what that is. All of us understand or have been exposed to the word trauma, right? So for most of us, what does that mean? I would tell you that I did not, as a child, I didn't suffer trauma. A counselor would probably look at my life and say, yeah, you did. You know, I mean, I told my kids from a very early age, I'm not saving for your college education. I'm saving for the counseling that you will need being raised by me. Because think about, I was raised by very, very, very strict parents We didn't drink, we didn't smoke, we didn't do all those things. And so there was an expectation. I was the fourth of 4 children. And so my maiden name is Bro. And so the Bro kids didn't do all the bad things that were going. We were the designated drivers for our friends. There was such an expectation that produced anxiety that I never knew I experienced until I got married. Because those expectations that we have on top of the baggage that we bring to a marriage, and then my husband brought his own baggage to the marriage. And so there is, for lack of a better term, it is the term, it is trauma. Trauma, not to the level, but it's still trauma, right? And so these counselors that we have, we started this pilot program because there were so many people that tell us there has to be something that you can provide for the children in the United States. And there is. I've said this probably before because people have always asked why we don't have aftercare campuses, survivor campuses, or do prevention in the United States. Well, in the United States, we do have foster care. It may be a broken system, but we have foster care, we have free lunch programs, we have all kinds of resources for children and adults here in the United States that are not available in underdeveloped countries, right? So to do aftercare here, especially for minors, the red tape, the expense is beyond what we ever felt like we could do to the level that we want to do it. We are what we would consider experts in our field now. We could take RAPHA International and plant it in any country. We are asked all the time. Just had a meeting with a family that want us to start a RAPHA International survivor care campus in the Philippines. Do we ever say no? We don't say no because the Lord may have something else in mind, but we say we want to keep doing what we're doing with excellence. If He provides the funds to do that, we'll have those conversations. So all along we've been asked multiple times, what do you do in the United States? So we started thinking about, with the systems that are in place, are there people, are there counselors that work with foster children, children of abuse of any kind, witnesses of domestic violence, whether they be children or adult? Again, our counselors are serving the community, tri-state community, because there are not as many counselors as there are needed in the United States, especially trauma-informed counselors. So they are serving children ages 3 to adult. So I want to talk about something that we showed in the video, EMDR. What is that? It is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's an interactive psychotherapy technique used to relieve psychological stress. So if a child comes to us into counseling, there is a way to train your eyes to reprocess your brain. So they do that with eye movement, they do that with light therapy, they do that with all kinds of, they teach them how to either pat to calm themselves down or just touch something. So you don't think, I don't think that if I've not experienced the type of trauma that a child has experienced, so what does that mean to me? That means nothing. I mean, I talked about the trauma of being raised by perfectionists, but that type of therapy wouldn't work for me because I don't think of that as that type of trauma. So when you get into the world of counseling, there's all kinds. The other kind of TFCBT is trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. We also have a therapist that is just dealing with perinatal mood and anxiety disorder. For you take any pregnant woman, right? And the spouse of a pregnant woman. There's a lot of counseling that could be needed, and so there's a specialty in that. So we have a counselor now in our office that is strictly focused on that type of counseling. So, one of the things that you need to understand about us is that whatever we do, we want to do it with excellence, and we want to make sure that we're the best at what we do. So the victims of traumatic crime, victims of sex trafficking and exploitation, children in foster care, children with reported physical, verbal, emotional, psychological, or sexual abuse, victims or witnesses of domestic violence, individuals with depression or anxiety, all of those are the types of clients that we're now seeing. So, we don't, most of you have probably never seen, I've probably never even shown you pictures of our home office. We have about 5,000 square feet in our office, and we gave up we had a store for all of the merchandise that we sell. We gave up our store space so that we could move our conference room to, this was back in 2020, move our conference room to that area, made a really small store by our reception area, and then we created 2 counseling spaces, one in our old conference room and one in one of our offices that were as private as they can be. So within 6 months, we had to hire a 3rd counselor, and she only works at night when the rest of us are gone. Sharing the space with families and people waiting for counseling has been a little bit difficult for us. We have moved a lot of what we do, again, through 2020. We realized that most of us can do our jobs from anywhere. As long as I have my phone, I can answer emails, I can do all of those kinds of things. But we still have the synergy of our staff that needs to be in our location, in our headquarters. So what we decided is that, okay, let's take the counseling center and move it off-site. So we looked for space, we couldn't afford this, we couldn't afford that. So now we have found a property that our CEO and I kept driving by this property, and it was a church. It used to be a church, a Methodist church, but it was a church plant. After the tornado, there were several people in the community that wanted to have I'd never heard of this, a trauma-informed church. So you've got all of these victims of trauma from the tornado, and so they built this, the Methodist church built this, the Methodist organization built this church and let this church plant move into this facility. It's 10,200 square feet, all on one level. They have half of a gym, they have a commercial kitchen because they were serving the community. They have a sanctuary on one side, and then they have a big, huge foyer that we're going to use as our home office. But then every other space is going to be for our counseling center. So that's the expansion that I want to talk to you about and ask if you have any questions about that. We want to take this to a new level. We also have a group in Florida that would like us to open a counseling center there. We have a group in Indiana that want us to open a counseling center there. But again, what we do with excellence. So we have a capital campaign going on, expansion program for us to move to this new facility and hire more counselors. We're going to have art therapy rooms. We're going to have movement therapy. Never heard of this before. Movement therapy is like where they would hang. We're going to have silk ropes hanging, silk fabric hanging. The kids can actually wrap themselves up. We're going to have chairs that they can swing in. There's a lot that happens for a young child that can't speak what's going on with them, but they can draw or they can act that out. We've got puppets. We've got all the ways that you can think of for kids to play, because you find out a lot about a kid's trauma by the way they play or the pictures that they draw. And so art therapy is huge. We actually, and I'm sure I've talked about this before, in all of our aftercare campuses internationally, we have an art therapy center. We have a separate center for art therapy. And so we felt that was just as big a need here in the United States. So we have a movement room, we have art therapy, we have counseling rooms for young children, we have counseling rooms for teens, and we have counseling rooms for adults. We will have. when we do this expansion. So, do we have any questions? Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. The one thing that we do have one counselor on staff that is accepting Medicare and Medicaid. So that's that's as far as we go with government involvement in what we're doing, because she wanted to accept those payments for people that could not afford traditional counseling. That's the other thing, is that we also have, with this expansion, we're going to have ways for people to support 1 week of counseling for a child, or a year of counseling for a child, or art therapy supplies. We have one, it's an organization called Art Feeds, and they have given us 2 years of art supplies for the children that we serve. So yes, we are not government funded. It's all by donation and partnerships. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Does it have to be okay, good question. She's saying people are asking us to bring this to other states. Could we just train or show them what we do? Actually, that's how Black Box International got started. They are doing aftercare for boys. And so, yes, we are more than willing to share with you everything that we do. It's like franchising, only not. You don't have to pay us for our knowledge or our experience. But what we want to see is, again, that's a little bit of, okay, are you going to do it? Even though we give you the resources, are you going to do it with excellence? So that's the only reason I say we would like to franchise and be involved in that. I don't know. I mean, because we've not gotten that far. All of our counselors are in, our 3 counselors are in, and we have one that we're going to hire in the fall. Our 4 counselors live in our tri-state area, so we actually know their experience. You know, that's very difficult, but it is a great question. Could we not just franchise what we do? Absolutely. I think that's possible. We are a wealth of information, and we share that information with lots of organizations. Our policies that we started with back in 2003 have changed drastically, because when you know better, you do better. Something that we know better now is one-to-one. We did child sponsorship push a couple of years ago, maybe last year, I don't remember. Now we understand that it would be more valuable to sponsor the community worker and her caseload as opposed to a one-to-one sponsorship, right? And so when we know better, we do better. So we have changed our policies. We've written stricter policies. We have policies that we share with churches all over the world. How to protect yourself, because where do traffickers go? Where there are children. And if the church is doing its job well, we are an open arm place for people to come, right? But we still have to protect our children, right? So there are ways to recognize, there are ways to protect yourself. And so we do training all the time for that. This new facility that we are purchasing, the sanctuary, will be used for training, because we actually already do trainings for police officers, ER workers, other counselors, to know what a trafficking victim looks like, because I bet you've seen it and you didn't know it was trafficking, right? And so we've had police officers come up to us all the time. We have a great relationship with our Joplin PD, but they have said before, I have seen this, I just didn't know what it was. So, know better, do better. Now he knows what to look for out in that community. Somebody over here had a question? The question, I don't know if you heard it, do we have music therapy as well? We do not at the moment, but that is absolutely, we do have musical instruments, but we don't have true music therapy. What I think you're talking about, that is an actual curriculum. Yeah, we do not have a counselor on staff that does that right now. We do have a lot of musical instruments that they can play with in our play therapy, but we don't actually have music therapy. Good point. Very good. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Great question. I support 3 children as well. We're working on that right now. So yes, ultimately we're probably going to ask you, hey, can we use those dollars to support a community worker or a classroom? You know, we have a preschool on every campus that we have, and so can we use those dollars? Because the care for the children doesn't change. It just means that we're not doing it one-to-one. So yes, that is coming down. I believe that change will be at the end of September. We're working on the language for that. And there are going to be people that, I'll be real honest, that will say, oh, if I can't do a one-to-one, I don't want to do that. And we understand that. Several organizations that we have taken this step with have lost sponsors. But if you love children, if you love RAPHA, you know that we're doing what we feel like is best for those kids. Thank you very much. I think there was something else. Okay. So we have quite a bit of time. Shocking, I know. Let's talk about, oh, yes, sir, I'm sorry. That is such a great question, and I love that I know the answer. His question was, do our counselors need counseling? Absolutely. And that started our CEO's sister, Angie. She is the counselor to the counselors overseas. So we learned that lesson very early on, that you've got people in the depths with these kids, not just our counselors, our social workers, our house mothers. They need a place to let it go. That's a lot to deal with when you've got trauma victims every single day in and day out. So yes, the answer to that is yes. I do not know where our counselors in the United States go for their counseling, because they are the best of the best in our community. But we have had that conversation. Staff care is super, super, super important to RAPHA. We do that for our own staff. Even before Angie was on staff with RAPHA, our RAPHA staff were allowed to do or offered counseling with her, because it is a heavy, heavy work that we do. I have never felt the burden, because I think I've said this many, many times before, if I can just know that I've saved one child, then my job and the effort that I put in, the flying all over the country, talking to people, and because I'm really good at talking, I use my voice well. But it does, it can be wearing on you. So yeah, I've been in counseling too. So have my kids, all of them. All 3 of them have been in counseling for being raised by my husband and I. Yes, ma'am. Very good question. I don't know if you heard it. She said, in our counseling in the United States, where does Jesus come in that type of counseling? I'm going to tell you, we do not force anyone to know Jesus or to choose Jesus to receive care, just like we don't do that in our aftercare campuses. But Jesus is the reason that we love. And so we use scripture in a lot of their therapies, especially in art. You can talk about God and creation when they're drawing flowers. You can talk about the love of Jesus for every child. And again, this is hard for others. It was for me to understand why a trauma victim wouldn't be angry with God. But it's our job to show them that God was hurt by their hurt. God is always hurt by our pain, by our trauma. He's hurt. We are responsible for sharing the love of Jesus, and we do that just by opening our doors, right? We're going to love them as soon as they walk in. But yes, the scripture is used, the Bible is used in all of our training. Thank you very much. Did you have a question? Oh, okay. Any other questions? Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about where we go from here. What does a relationship with Plainfield look like in this? We are starting, and like I said, a capital campaign. So we want you to partner with us in any way that you can, right? We want people to understand the value of the choice that we've made to do our Hope and Healing Center in the United States. So that's a partnership that can go on with just the church. It can go on with individuals. My husband and I are going to be expansion partners because we feel that it's so valuable. Does anybody have any questions about what that looks like? No. Awesome. Okay. Bruce, we have lots of time. We have like 30 minutes. Okay, so any questions about, have all of you been here before to talk about, because I can talk all day about all of our other programming. Would you like me to talk about all of our other programming? Awesome. Okay, so like I said, in 2003, we started with aftercare for victims, survivors of human trafficking. We do that for girls ages 6 to 18. And like I said, we started in Cambodia, and we are in 2 locations in Cambodia, and now we are in Thailand. We're about to expand that ministry in Thailand, and then we are now in Haiti as well. But in the beginning, what that looked like was some of our, not even staff at the time, we were working with some pastors in a community, actually did rescue. Rescue is very, very dangerous work. We got out of that business very quickly and developed a relationship with each government. We can't go into a government without their permission. You have to explain what you're doing. You have to explain why you're doing it, just like you would here if you had to open up a facility. So we started in Cambodia. And what that looks like, we are going to do, as soon as she walks through the doors or the gates of RAPHA International, do you think she understands that she's been rescued? No. All she knows is that she's been moved and there's a bunch of other girls here. What are they going to expect of me? Right? So our job is to open our arms and to share with her that she is not expected to do anything. Here is your bed. You don't, and no one gets in this bed with you. These are your toiletries. These are your clothes. Here's your bunk. No one has to get in this bed with you. We're going to take her to the dining room and show her that she's going to be fed 3 meals a day and 2 snacks. Our job is to help her get healthy. We're going to make sure that she has a physical, she's going to have dental care done. All of her physical needs are going to be met. That alone speaks volumes to most of these girls. Still not going to trust us, but she's going to know that she's going to know pretty quickly on that she's cared for, right? The most important thing to us is girls that have already been there. They're the ones that are going to show her that these people can be trusted. Still takes a long time. Worst story ever, it came out of Haiti. A girl, it took her a year. We've been looking for her family for over a year because of the story that she told us. She didn't even give us her real name. So we'd been looking for XYZ in the community and couldn't find anybody by that name because she made that name up. Took her a year to tell us her real name, and then we were able to find her family. So trust is important, trust is developed, trust is earned. And so our counselors, each child that comes across the gates of RAPHA, they will be assigned to a team that works with them. They'll have a counselor, a social worker, vocational training if they're old enough to do a vocation, and an educator. What that means is finding where they belong in the educational system. Some of them have come out as children and have never gone to school. Some have come out as middle schoolers, and so they need to go back into school. We need to figure out their educational level. And then we're going to have an attorney that works with this child because we want them to know we're going to fight. We don't always win every case that we fight, but we're going to go take her case to court. We want to end trafficking one child at a time. So then she has a house mother, and she has either a cottage. In our original, again, this is one of those know better, do better. In the beginning, in 2003, we did dormitory style. So our flagship safe house actually has 4 big, huge rooms, dormitory style. And then the house mothers are we have 2 house mothers in each room with probably 10 to 15 girls in each room. Now we do cottages. On every other campus we have 8 to 10 cottages, and they house 8 to 10 girls with 1 house mother. So it's more like a family, a community. They have their own way to do their laundry. They all share the dining room experience. They have chores. They are treated just like they would be at home. We don't do air conditioning for them because they're not going to have air conditioning when they get home. Our job is to teach them life skills, deal with their trauma, and hopefully reintegrate them to their families if it's safe to do so. I believe I've told you this before too. We are the only organization that works with special needs children. We have 8 special needs girls in a house that's down the road from our large campus in Cambodia. We do not have a special needs in any other location at the moment, but that is something that our Haiti Family Care Network is talking about because people don't know what to do with, especially if you're not educated and they don't have any kind of care for those suffering with any kind of special need in underdeveloped countries. So it's all about training. We have reintegrated some of our girls that have come through our special needs because we were able to work with their families, because their families had no idea how to deal with them, how to work with them. They are not throwaways. They are wonderful individuals. And you guys know that. I think you'll have a special needs ministry here, so you would know that they're children of God just like the rest of us. Then we also have in our prevention, on the prevention side of what we do, we started a long time ago as we were in the communities looking for the families of the girls that were in our care. We noticed how many children were at risk. And those children are the ones that you want to catch before they ever go off that cliff. You want to educate communities, whole communities, about even if you don't have a child that is that age, right? We want you to understand because you're going to be the auntie or the uncle or the neighbor that cares about kids when they're in your community. And so we do community education. Our community workers are solid. The best statistic I have about our prevention program is that 46% of our community workers grew up in our community program. And so they know the value of being in those communities and training and understanding what a trafficker looks like in their village. So we started with a one-to-one sponsorship, and now we're moving, like I said, to a community-based effort, because if we can educate and give resources, our job, again, one-to-one sponsorship, I've done it since day one of when I learned about RAPHA. My job is not to take and pay for you not to take care of your kid. I want to come alongside you. So in a community-based effort, we're going to be able to even reach more families with education, because if you can educate them, if you can educate their children, the best way out of poverty is education and resources. If you give them ways to fend for themselves, to do for themselves, we don't need to do for them. We need to come alongside them. So that's what our community-based programs are going to be for prevention. But once you get into the prevention work, you talk about joy. I mean, that is so fun to watch kids grow up knowing not only the love of Jesus, but that they can make a difference, that they're going to be the changers of the next generation. Their parents may not have been educated, but they're going to be education. We have educated. We have probably about 10% of the children that have grown up in our program that are now in university. So huge difference in knowing and believing that they can go on and do higher education. So that's the prevention side of what we do. We also, I don't know if I've talked about this a lot, but we are a part of, in Southeast Asia, now in Haiti it's called the Haiti Family Care Network, but in Southeast Asia it's called, we have a coalition of Christian organizations. So what happens when you have a girl that goes through our program, she's ready to reintegrate, either her family were the traffickers or she has no safe place to go, or she doesn't want to go back to her village. She wants to go on to university, or she wants to do something different. Culturally, in Southeast Asia, in Thailand, and in Cambodia, it is has been in the past unheard of for a girl to go from her family to living on her own, like sharing an apartment with another girl or doing anything other than getting married and being cared for by a husband. So we have changed the face of what that looks like. We now have, with these organizations, we have step-down programs. We started with this coalition of Christian organizations. We have training programs in the hospitality industry, in the food industry, in sewing, in management, in accounting. We have so many different organizations that allow our girls to go through their training programs, but it was very difficult to have a girl live in our care and have other girls their age or that have just joined the program don't understand that freedom, that they could go out and be in a training program. So we now have our own step-down program. We have purchased another facility in Cambodia where girls can go. It is, we still have a house mother. We still have a counselor, one of our counselors on staff that goes and visits with them. They will always be ours as long as they're in our care, but they are way more free to do and to live. So it's very hard for them to understand that we can live with each other. I can have a job. I don't have to go back to my parents' home. I can be independent. Because some of our girls are older and we don't really age out. We have one girl that's in our care that's still, she's 20 years old. Our criteria is ages 6 to 18. Our youngest in our Thai house right now is 3, which is incredible to think about, but she is 3, and then we do have a 20-year-old in our Cambodia house. But we also want to make sure that they have a place to be independent if they choose to be independent. So we have that in the 2 locations in Cambodia, now have our own RAPHA step down. We call it the Freedom Center because it is offering more freedom than being in our care aftercare campus, but it is still protection for them until they're able to live on their own. In Haiti, it looks a little bit different because it's a whole network of how we've got housing developments that it's kind of like our low-income housing that we have here. We've got a housing development that we have for families. So we've got a lot of the prevention work that we have going on is new to us, but very important to understand the education of communities. So from prevention, then we go on to the awareness that we provide for everybody here, engagement for all of you, and then back to our counseling here in the United States. Any questions? Yes, sir. Besides money. Wow, that's an awesome question. What resources do we have besides money? Well, I would say my favorite resource is always going to be to pray. For us, as a ministry, pray for traffickers because they need Jesus too. Pray for the children that have yet to be found, that are in that situation that need to be out of that situation. Pray for the girls as they reintegrate into this new life of freedom, that they own it. We talk about our we don't really have success rate. What we measure is recidivism, how many of our girls go back into that lifestyle once they've left us. It's still less than 10%, but to me, it's important to help them understand that life is not the life Jesus would choose for them. People ask us all the time, what is your success rate? I don't measure, because what does success look like? We have my favorite story to tell, and we'll end with this story. We had a girl that came to us. She was with us for 3 years. Her mom was her trafficker. Her mom wanted her, she made way more money than she would ever make in our care. And so her mom came and took her out of our program, took her back to her little community, and she was back into the lifestyle. I'm not using a specific word. Kids are in here. So she went back into that lifestyle, but we never lost touch. She kept in touch. One of her dreams, we have a video of her talking about what she wanted to be when she got out of the program. She wanted to be a counselor for RAPHA. So we replay that. She often would lose or change her phone number, but our social worker, who is now our country director in Cambodia, she never lost touch with her. She would find her and continue to find her and continue to find her. Year 5. She's been gone for 5 years. She comes to T and says, I want out. Can you help me get out? So we got her into a vocational training program with one of those organizations. She went into the program. It was an Australian company, couple that started cake decorating and baking. And so she got into that program. It's an 18-month program. She graduated. Her mom came and got her again. But our counselor and our social worker never left her side. They continue to get in touch with her. Year 7, she says, can I come back? Her case is closed. Her parents were actually prosecuted and back out. It was mostly her uncle, but her mom was a part of that. But guess where she is now? She is a house mother in our special needs house. Year 8, we trained and we worked with her, and she is now a house mother. Because we don't give up. We are going to change the face of human trafficking one child at a time. Let's pray. God, we thank you for never leaving us, for giving us the opportunity to work with children that have seen what no child should see. Thank you for the resource of prayer, that we can come to you and be thankful. We can come to you on our knees in our trauma, in our hurt. We can come to you on behalf of other people. I do pray for this church, that they continue to grow and be a force for you in this community, but also as partners with RAPHA. We thank you for all that you do in this group, with this group of people. They're just amazing people. And so I'm very thankful that they're partners with us, but very thankful that they have your heart. And it's through Jesus that we pray.